So in this video, I'm going to tell you the two options that could make sure that you never run out of money in retirement. They're relatively straightforward, but the question is, will you want to take them? If we haven't spoken before, my name's George. I'm a chartered financial planner, retirement planning specialist, and lamp over purchaser. Anyway, so let me tell you the story which I think perfectly summarizes the challenges with retirement planning and the task ahead of you from my good friend Abraham at Timeline. And it involves climbing Mount Everest of all things. And did you know that research from the British Medical Journal showed that most climbers who die on Mount Everest do so above 8,000 meters, not on the way up, but usually during the descent from the summit. Apparently most deaths occur while descending the upper slope called the death zone. And anyway, just kind of similar like that, much in retirement and achieving the point of financial freedom, reaching the summit or the point where you are financially free, it is an incredible achievement, and it's often a result of a huge amount of work and sacrifice. But it's definitely better to understand it's a halfway point and also the point of maximum risk. What makes retirement planning different is that you only get one go at retirement. And if you're relying on investment returns, you have no idea what the investment returns are going to be going forward. I mean, are you going to retire in a boom or bust period? All of this is to say is that you need to understand your strategy for coming down the mountain, so to speak. And you need to put as much purpose and focus as you gave into getting up the mountain and achieving the point where you've got enough to retire. So what we need to do now is make sure that you don't run out of money in retirement. And the first step is to get a really good handle on what enough looks like. And there are 5 key points that we can take to do this. 1, really understand your own expenditure now and in retirement. Spoiler alert, you probably won't change that much. 2, make sure that you account for one-off expenditures and unknowns. 3, gather all your asset values, income sources, understand the asset allocation, inflation protection for each, all the rest of it. 4, consider your options on drawing down on your assets in what order. And 5, consider the various retirement specific risks, sequence risk, higher inflation, lower returns, costs, all the rest of it. Simple, right? I just summarized it in 5 points. Well, look, once you have this, you have a really strong basis for a proper financial plan. And this can then act as a roadmap for your future. Professionals like myself use purpose-built software like the one that I'll show you now. And this really allows us to understand where you sit on your retirement journey and also look into things like taxation and how we can maybe improve the situation. So a very simple solution to know how much income you're going to have is just to purchase guaranteed income, also known as an annuity. Now, the stats from the Financial Conduct Authority show that actually not very many people take this option at this moment in time. And if I just go through the data, you can see that comparatively, only a small amount of people use their funds to purchase an annuity compared to a drawdown or a lump sum. So what you're doing via the annuity is you're using your pot of money to decide to buy that guaranteed income for life. The annuity will pay out as long as you live, and in the UK it's backed with 100% FSCS protection. So it really is as secure as you can get, and if you want to focus on that, there's no better option. The downside is you will exchange that for a good level of capital. Insurers aren't charities, and ultimately it will depend on how long you live and how you write the annuity as far as how much value you extract from it. All that is just to say that it's not like there are no risks with annuities. They may be guaranteed as far as the income, but they don't de-risk your circumstances necessarily. Annuities are inflexible. And due to that, if you secure what you thought was enough income via an annuity and you leave yourself no other flexibility, then if things change and your income needs go up and you can't work, well, you've got no other option. There's also the challenge for a couple if you're planning for 2. And if one individual dies, on the new state pension, generally the state pension dies with you. So at the moment, a full state pension is about £11,500 per year, or 23 grand between 2. If you want to know a bit more detail, you can have a look at my State Pension Secrets video where I go over things in a lot more detail. But anyway, if you're counting on that joint income level and one person passes away, you could have secured an income which is now, due to your circumstances, lower than you need. And we need to consider all these elements in the round. Now, annuity rates are higher than they were before, so it should be considered along other planning angles. Now, insurers clearly aren't offering annuities out of the kindness of the heart. They're doing it out to make money. So there's a trade-off here. But I do think there is a place on some occasions for securing a level of guaranteed income for core needs and then having flexibility for other spending, especially when you use this in tandem and consideration with the fact that income needs tend to decline over retirement for most, as long as there aren't things like care. So let's give you some context. At time of recording, for someone who's age 60 with RPI, that's retail price index inflation, annuity rates are currently about 3.28%. And this is for what's called joint life at 100%. So that basically means that it will continue for a spouse or dependent. So you may have seen quotes like 5-6%, but when those quotes come out, they're very, very rarely with inflation protection or anything for your spouse as well. So the benefit of those type of annuities is that if an individual who passes away, it can continue at the same level for the spouse as well. Now, pension annuities are always taxable at the marginal rate of who receives them, and the annuity rates you get are heavily impacted by the general interest rate or the gilt environment, to be technical, but also the age of the individual who the annuity is being written for, the health, even sometimes the postcode. Long story short, I'm generally not just saying this, but if you are going to purchase an annuity, I would strongly suggest getting independent advice, because ultimately it's something that you really need to make sure it's written in the right way for you. It's a one-off purchase, so I just think it would be crazy to not make sure you're getting the best value out of it. So let's go through an example. Let's say you have a couple who are 60, they've got sizable pension pots, and they really want £18,000 net as a household, whatever happens. They therefore have a shortfall until their state pension age, because they've retired at 60, their state pension is kicking at 67. And total security of the core need is very important to them both. They've had some concerns about money in the past due to family experience around money, and just deep down that they want that security, that they know that level is guaranteed no matter what. And I just want to acknowledge that as a client profile. It does happen. It's important, I think, for advisors. While I'm always going to be an advisor who generally has a preference for higher equity content because it delivers higher growth and it's going to put a client in a better position for over a longer period of time, I also think it's important to acknowledge that for individuals when it comes to retirement, the sleep at night factor is really important as well. And for some, a level of secured income makes people better investors and better spenders, as they feel that they can then spend with confidence, safe in the knowledge there's a strong degree of secured income. That does not necessarily mean it's the best possible value, most optimal, highest returning solution, but we're dealing with humans here, not computers. So I'm not as dogmatic in saying everything needs to go into 100% equities at retirement, even though that's the asset allocation of my own personal portfolio, not advice. An example I give is my wife, for example, isn't really interested in finance at all, despite my best efforts. And honestly, I think about if it's a case that I wasn't around and she was to retire, I definitely would have some concerns if someone said, I'll throw into a 100% equity portfolio, because if the market pulled back, I do think it would probably cause some stress and sleepless nights. So in this example, what they could each do is take out a lifetime annuity of £3,250 after tax. So what we're going to do is we're going to uplift that to £4,062.50 just to be safe, to factor in 20% tax, because pension annuities are taxable. So that now means between them, they have £8,125 per annum. And I've split the income in half because it's more likely to be in their personal allowances for longer and come through at 0% tax at the start of the journey. Although I have factored in a 20% tax drag just to make sure that when the state pensions kick in, that we're still getting the net income that we want. So I'm just going to put some rates I found at the time recording. So this is an annuity at 60 with 100% joint life. And now you can get 5.64% for a level annuity, as in no increases with inflation. But remember, inflation is likely going to halve the value of money over your retirement. So we have to bear that in mind, especially if we're looking for security. So an RPI cover at time of recording was at 3.28%. Now, I know that sounds like a lot as far as a capital figure, but bear in mind there's full inflation protection here. And for a couple who are 65, this data shows there's a 51% chance that one of them will reach age 90. And £100 30 years ago in 1994 is worth in real terms £275 today. So they're not just buying the inflation protection, they're also buying the guarantee. Okay, so what we've done now is we've locked in some guaranteed income, but as you all note, we don't have enough for the 18,000 net in the earlier years before the state pension kicks in. And there's a bit of a problem because when the state pensions kick in, they're going to have more than they need. We also need to factor in what happens if one of them passes away, because the state pension effectively is going to die with them. Well, in that instance, if security was the key priority for some of the funds, they could consider what's called a fixed term annuity. Now, the fixed term annuity is guaranteed. You can get options which have guaranteed inflation protection in exchange for capital until 67. A fixed term annuity is also removing interest rate risk. And again, I hear probably through the screen that some people say, well, just put money in cash or do other things to maybe optimize it. But remember, the client brief was to focus on the security of income. So that's the priority in this example. Memories are short. Remember, it was only 2 years ago when cash rates were around 1%. And as we found, a lot can happen in 7 years. Okay, so what would happen then is that then they've got two sources of guaranteed income. And what could happen is their state pensions then would start, the fixed term annuity would end, and then they would have the other additional annuities in payment. And because the guaranteed annuities were offered with 100% spousal protection and we were a little bit careful on the tax drag, they know that if either one of them dies, they'll continue to pay for the other spouse. Now, there are loads of more complicated things you can do, gilt laddering, all that rest of it, but I just want to go through some options. And if you imagine that was a position where that was really important, and then they also had a nice big flexible pot, maybe invested heavily in equities, they could then use the mixture of those two things so that they've got absolute freedom, that if they want to blow the start of the retirement on a load of holidays and have flexibility or gift to the kids, they can do, but they can do that in safe in the knowledge that their primary objective is achieved. So there's some options to make sure there's a level of guarantee within the provisions. But there's going to be a lot of people, and I think I'll probably be included in that, who don't fit in with that, who just don't need that level of guarantee, that kind of regimented position. And for those people, it is absolutely essential that they put together a financial plan so that we know what we're dealing with. Because once we've done that, we can start considering the next steps, which is adaptive spending, which is a fancy way of saying adapt as we go. And the principles behind this is important to recognize that life generally in financial decisions are just a series of trade-offs. If you want the flexibility of a drawdown pot when you can dip in as and when you choose, you have to accept there are some strings attached. Those strings are a degree of uncertainty and volatility. We know that on average, the market will decline once every 4 or 5 years on average by at least 20%. Now that sounds standard, and I know a lot of you will be nodding along, but trust me, when the swings in values ends up to being hundreds of thousands of pounds, it can be a lot more painful in reality. All I'm saying is that sometimes those changes can seem very different in the abstract compared to in reality. And it's just about being honest with yourself so that you can invest in preparation, not prediction, as Nassim Taleb says. Okay, so how can we manage these challenges and make sure we don't run out of money? I'll show you an example of a client, and don't worry too much about the precise figures you're going to see in this model. They're irrelevant. It's more about when the money's running out. So I've just put a very simple cash flow here. We were running out of money at exactly age 100 or just off it. Now for a male, the average life expectancy is about 85, and there's a 1 in 4 chance they'll reach 92 and a 3.5 chance they'll get to 100. But remember, a 51% chance that one in the couple will hit 90. So it pays to be cautiously optimistic here. Okay, so let's now stress test it. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to reduce the value of the portfolio in line with a 25% correction lasting 2 years. All the withdrawals are going to stay the same. So to be clear, the long-term return of the portfolio was the same previously as the previous one where it lasted to 100. But what I've done is I've shown the impact of sequencing risk. So after the correction, we have years where the performance goes back up. But because of that sequencing risk, because they needed to draw down at that critical point at the start of retirement, you can see the funds are now due to run out at a much earlier age. But what happens if the individual takes action? So what they're going to do now is they're going to reduce their expenditure down by 10%. So for most, that would probably be, maybe one less holiday a year, or maybe just short haul or whatever. And you can see the impact that's had on the longevity of the cash flow, the power of adapting. And that's why the cash flow plan is so important. Now, the great thing is if you have a financial plan, you can kind of see this way in advance. Now, there is, to be clear, a real downside with an adaptive strategy, which is if things do get really bad, then you might need to continually adjust down. And while a 10% drop and recovery isn't that bad, many of us really wouldn't typically want a 20% cut to our expenditure. Again, that's easy to say in abstract, but actually when that means not only having the holidays, but also doing the things you really enjoy, that can be a lot in retirement. So there are your two options. You can either effectively secure guaranteed income or adapt as you go. So I've talked a lot about the importance of a financial plan. Well, to help you construct a really good plan, there are some key mistakes that you need to make sure you avoid. And in this video, I'll go over 7 key ones that most people really do need to avoid to have a great retirement. So I'd suggest giving it a watch if you're worried about making expensive mistakes. Either way, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.